When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. For there is in London all that life can afford.
Oh my God.
I'm Eddy Webb.
I'm interrupting you. You're really choosing Sherlock Holmes as our thing that
Samuel
we do?
Jackson, my friend. Samuel Johnson.
Win.
Samuel Johnson, my friend. Samuel Jackson's a very different person.
Oh my God. Snakes on a motherfucking plane.
And today we're going to talk about London here on Genres. As you can tell, this is a very different episode. We are actually physically in the same space as each other.
In a pub, hence the noise, the weird background sounds.
Right.
Questioning whether or not we'll be pulled off of the podcaster for illegal music use.
You're going to hear bits and pieces of music, hopefully not enough snippets that will get us a ding, but we'll see how it goes.
So, Eddie, why did you fly me all the way out to London on your own dime to sit in a pub to record a podcast episode?
Oh, bold of you to assume I have any dimes. Because first of all, we use pence. We don't use dimes.
I know. It was weird because we're staying in a hotel. It's a really nice hotel. And I had 20-pound notes, but I couldn't leave a 20-pound note to tip the people within the room. So I had to go out and buy something to get change, to then realize I'm an old man and I have to use my phone to enlarge the coinage so I can see what it reads on it.
It is hard.
So I didn't leave a 50-pence note instead of like 2 pounds.
Right.
For the waste.
I will say one of the things that's nice about the currency here is that all the different notes are different sizes, and all of the different coins have a different texture around them.
Yeah.
So that way, if you're blind, you're able to actually tell what coinage you have in hand without seeing it. But if you don't know what those shapes and sizes are, that means nothing to you.
Correct. Hence my having to use my phone to make it large enough for me to see with my aged near Eddy Webb age eyes.
That's how it's going to go. It's one of those podcasts. No, Chris is here in London visiting with his family on vacation, and we thought we would get some drinks and talk.
You say vacation. This is a research trip.
Oh, is it?
I've been to the British Museum. I've been to the Churchill Rooms. I'm researching something that I will call Redacted 3.6.
Wow. Yeah, we do have various levels of redacted.
Yes. And it's going really well.
Good. Excellent.
I'm going to now complain about something for our odd 30 listeners. That I had my chance to go to Forbidden Planet.
Uh-huh.
It's a beautiful, big, massive store with a tiny RPG collection.
It is.
And I go to the tiny RPG collection to look and see if certain books are there because I'm a writer.
Yep.
And I want to know if my stuff is there. And I look, and they primarily have a bunch of D&D,
Uh-huh.
which I've never written for.
Right.
And they have some Chaosium stuff, which I have written for. But there's not a copy of Harlem Unbound to be found.
No, it's not.
So if you are a goer of Forbidden Planet, you should tell them you want to have Harlem Unbound there and you want to have Pugmire on their shelves.
Two very important games.
And Haunted West, because I get more money off of that if it sells.
Tell them Pugmire's a D&D supplement and they'll get it. Tell them Harlem Unbound is a D&D supplement and they'll get it.
But are they, I can't even say 5e anymore, are they 2024 editions?
Oh God, no. They're actually less D&D now than they were before.
All right, now that we're on this trail, and I'm about 4 beers in.
I'm 2 drinks in. I'm starting my second drink.
Eddy's a slower drinker than I am, because he's a man of a certain age, which means he can't hold his alcohol.
No, I'm at a certain age that if I drink too much, I will get sick and die. I mean, not die. But
Eddy's a man of a certain age that cares about his health more than I do.
Right, there we go. There we go.
Phrase it properly, I guess. So now having said that, Eddy, what is your opinion of D&D 2024?
I actually have not looked too much at it. I have a D&D group, and
what?
Actually, we've been playing since lockdown. Actually, right before lockdown.
All right, tell me about the group. Now we're just gonna talk about gaming. That's what this really is.
Sure. So spoilers. We didn't go into this with a plan. So you know how those parts of the podcast where we talk anything but the topic? Assume like that, but with no actual topic.
And more noise.
Right, and more noise. My housemates, David, started to run a D&D because a couple of people he used to work with were also gamers.
Yeah.
And when you know that your friends are also gamers, but you don't know exactly what games they're like, D&D is kind of the lingua franca. It's okay, everyone plays D&D, at least you're familiar.
Why does it have to be D&D? Have we not matured past that?
It is in the same way why some people still call photocopies Xerox, right? D&D is the Xerox of gaming.
I want to change that.
I agree, but the point is, especially when lockdown started happening, most of the tools were geared around D&D, so it made it easier to continue to play D&D. But we've been actually playing the same game for 5 years now, partially because our game master's great and also quickly throws out rules that are boring. But also, we actually wanted to see what would happen if you go to the full level 1 to 20, because, spoiler, after level 20, D&D is broken.
Well, some people say D&D is broken after level 10.
Well, I agree, but it gets really broken after level 20.
All right, so
That's the reason why Pugbear stops at 10, actually, is because I know it breaks down after 10.
now I have two different points. First point, which edition of D&D are you playing?
We're playing 5th edition 2014 with some 2024 rules.
My second question is, what is Pugmire, Eddy Webb?
I have talked about Pugmire on the podcast, but Pugmire is...
You've never told me what Pugmire is in person. Caveats, my friend, are always relevant.
You are nothing but pedantic. Yes, so Realms of Pugmire is my fantasy game, which was originally based off of the D&D engine, and then Wizards of the Coast decided they wanted to make some interesting changes to their licenses that they then rolled back, but those interesting changes happened during the course of my crowdfunding campaign. So I decided that I was going to divest myself of D&D legally, and so now I have a completely distinct game system that is similar to, but not the same as, 2014's version of 5th. That's so clunky. Why don't they just say 6th edition? Why don't they just say 6th edition?
Because they can't make as much money next time they want to market something if they already have a 6th edition out.
Edition numbers can keep going up. I mean, what's Call of Cthulhu now on, 75th edition?
Well, Call of Cthulhu's on 7th edition. Technically, I think it's like 7.5 now. But they're not going to say that.
Right.
But Call of Cthulhu has a more, listen to me selling chaos here, has a more illustrious history, in my opinion, than D&D.
In what way? I'm curious.
Because it has actual history and horror in it compared to D&D that's primarily just people with a bunch of swords and some magic.
Okay, fine. So what you're saying is Call of Cthulhu has actual research.
I didn't want to be as frank about it. If you want to go that level of frankness, yes, research is essential.
Right. Okay. The other reason why I find it amusing is because every even-numbered version of D&D editions ultimately has some kind of giant legal problems. So maybe it's the other reason why it's not 6th edition.
Okay. Well, then, what is your favorite edition of D&D? Since we're obsessed with talking about D&D today.
Honestly, I am always been a stand for the 4th edition version, which I know most people do not like.
Wow, we can no longer be friends.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great podcast. Got to go.
Okay, so my favorite edition of D&D is 3.75.
So Pathfinder.
Right before Pathfinder. So, it's that door. So, technically, I'd say 3.5 is my favorite edition of D&D.
Right.
I've run a bunch of 2nd edition D&D, and I've run some 3rd edition D&D. I've even run some kids' games for 5th edition.
Sure.
But if I have my choice, I'll always play 3.5. Or Pathfinder 1st edition. Not Pathfinder 2nd edition that I'm playing now with my my thaumaturge, which is basically The Witcher.
Right.
Is my character. With my, so I went, all right, so now I'm going to talk about Pathfinder. Why are we talking about fantasy games when neither one of us do fantasy games our big thing?
I know.
So my thaumaturge is basically a guy with a bunch of charisma and a mean right hook who has a Beastmaster subclass, who has a pet scorpion that I charge it to sting people. Eddy, it gets 3 attacks. It charges you, it hits with the 2 claws, and then a tail attack that also does poison damage.
That's amazing.
I know, because I was, God, who was it? Nonax on YouTube, who I watch for Pathfinder stuff, explained all the different creatures to me. I was like, I don't like scorpions, but that just sounds awesome to play in. What is the Kingdoms game? God damn it, I forgot it now. That's what.
The D&D setting?
No, the Pathfinder setting.
Oh.
There's one where you're going to retake a kingdom for different people. Kingmaker. God.
Oh, Kingmaker, right.
I've been drinking too much today.
Or not enough, depending on your point of view.
No. True, if I had hard liquor, then I would think quicker.
Right.
Because you know why?
Why?
Liquor's quicker.
Liquor is quicker. I've heard that. And it rhymes, therefore it must be true.
If we're going to move away from talking about D&D and Pathfinder, what would you like to discuss now that we're in person, literally for the first time ever?
For the first time ever, I know. It's that weird part of modern society where you can befriend someone for years but never actually physically meet them. And it's kind of awkward, like, how is this going to be? And it's usually fine. But still, there's that kind of awkward thing, like, is it going to be fine?
All right. I'm not going to speak for Eddy, but I'm about to speak for Eddy. We are two men of a certain age who are game designers and geeks.
Right.
With, you say, Eddy's very much punk. I'm still pretty much goth.
Right.
And then a layer of awkwardness on top of all of that. So
oh, sure.
When you meet someone, there is a high probability that is not going to go well.
Then I also would say, in my experience, if I befriend someone online, usually it goes reasonably well. I've never met someone in person and gone, oh God, no, never mind, this is a mistake. Abort. I mean, I've not been like that.
I've had the opposite experience.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
I was really hesitant about today. I was like, maybe I just cancel with Eddy and we stay online friends.
Right. To be fair, I did side with your daughter against you a couple times in this conversation. So
she is super smart. And she will tell you that herself.
Right.
Repeatedly.
So no, I mean, I only vague topic I had in mind, since we are here in London.
I'm going to do though, right?
What?
You mentioned your topic in passing.
So you're going to go off topic. I get it.
I'm going to actively avoid that topic.
Right. So that's why I'm going to talk about something that I know we don't want to talk about, even though I think I can lure you in. Is that you and I are both people of a certain age who were...
I know, 20.
That is a bold-faced lie. You're not 20.
I was 20 at one point in time.
That was a very long time ago, my friend.
Time is an irrelevant concept.
Last time you were 20, it was the 20th century.
That's true.
It was an entire century ago. But you and I are both of a certain age where we're both Americans who grew up in some shape or form on British television.
Yes.
And so I find it interesting, especially since I moved here, the idea that some of the culture shock I would go to a different country is lessened because I had so much exposure in some ways to British culture via television.
Absolutely. Because for me, all right, so honestly, one of the reasons I'm here is I'm celebrating a birthday that's coming up soon. And I had to move my trip up because it overlapped with my kids' spring break, because we're going to be out of the country for about 14 days.
Right.
And getting to come to the UK was something I always wanted to do, because I was in the Army, and the Army sent me to a bunch of places I did not want to go.
Right.
But there was a substantial culture shock. Coming here, I'm already used to a lot of the different words that are used. I'm used to crossing the street, which is different.
Right.
And things like that, just from all the stuff that I've watched over the decades.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, it's fascinating because, like, obviously you don't get all the nuances of culture from watching it purely for television. And certainly I've seen the reverse of that, because some people make some assumptions about me based on the exposure to American television. My favorite example is when I lived in Ireland, actually. I was walking my dog one day, and one of the local teenagers came up and started chatting with me. I'd seen him a couple times, so I knew he was familiar. I was like, yeah, how you doing? Just got to know each other a little bit. And then suddenly was really keen to ask me about guns. Like, a lot. Like, did you ever own a gun? And of course, I lived in Atlanta, so yeah, I owned a gun at one point. And I was like, can you tell me about it? What was it like? What caliber was it? And I was just like, you're getting a little too sexual about this conversation about my gun, my friends.
So, for our listeners, I'm going to assume that kid was 18, and that's what they call flirting.
Maybe. I just want to walk my 10-year-old pug, buddy, and when the dog poops, I'm out of this conversation, just so we're clear.
Okay, can you let me know if this is a scheme? So, we're sitting here, we're getting ready to see, like, the changing of the guards come down the street.
Right.
Big crowd of people, like lines, queues and queues of people. And this one teenager and his 4 friends behind him walk up to me, and they're like, and I won't do an accent, I'm tempted to, but it's like, sir, would you give me a high five? And I stared at him and his friends, and very politely, for me, I said no. And then he looked at me, confused by I said no, and then they left. I felt there was a scheme or a trick going to occur.
So there's two answers to that. The one is I don't know if that's a particular ploy or anything. I've not heard that before, but it wouldn't surprise me. Okay, I should take it back. Sometimes people say, give me a high five as a way to start a conversation to get you to sign something. So that may be actually what they're trying to do. Because I have run into that before. Hey, give me a high five, and I did, and say, hey, since you're here, I'm going to talk to you about blah. That particular conversation, now we're talking about it, actually makes sense. They wanted me to sign.
Teens, I'd say 14 to 17.
Okay, yeah, because this guy was young too. He then wanted me to give money for this a charity for animal preservation. And then when I asked to see the website, he showed me a Facebook page. And I'm like, yeah, no, because I have a policy of, like, if someone asks me on the street to get the money, I say, can you give me your website so I can go ahead and donate through the website? And if they get weird around that, I'm usually a scam. But the second part of that is scheme means something very different here, and it has been messing with me. Scheme is just a way of doing things, right? There's no nefarious concept for it. So, like, I have a pension scheme. There are investment schemes. They're just called schemes, but that's not. There's no malice behind that. That's just what they're called. The structure of doing a thing is called a scheme.
No. All right, so I felt there was something devious going on.
Right. You're probably right, honestly. Now I'm talking through, you're probably right.
I just shut it down, and they were confused because I don't think they have people that would normally just say no bluntly and be done with it.
Well, that is something else I have noticed culturally, is I am just used to telling people no. And that is something that culturally does not happen very often here. So, again, similarly, someone approached me on the tube and was like, usually they ask questions, I just ignore them. Especially if it's in the form of give me money. Sorry, mate, cashless society. You know, I have no physical cash on me. It's all cards. But every once in a while, I get a little insistent, and I'll just go no, and they don't know what to do with that. I usually not that, but usually like, no, I'm good, thanks. So it's like, but you said no. It's like, that is correct.
I am more curt with my nose than
fair, but also like
that's my army that comes out.
A couple of times, like for a while, I would go to UK Games Expo, one of the biggest role-playing game conventions here. Back to gaming. I'd come here with the Onyx Path and a few people from the area. One guy from Italy, but everyone else is from the UK. We'd go and run games and whatnot. And every once in a while, I would be the token American. I was like, hey, this guy, could you go talk to him? Like, sure, I'll be the asshole American. Sometimes one example was there was a long queue and people were kind of just sitting there talking and not like getting their tickets processed so we could get our tickets to run our games. And so I walked up to him and said, hey, excuse me, are you in queue? I'm like, oh, no, we're just talking. It's cool, great. And I just walked right in front of him. And people were like, could you just be American at them? Great, no problem. I'm good. I have 50 years experience of being American.
I will say, now that you mentioned that, one of the weirdest parts about being here is being an American now with everything going on, and then feeling that I need to apologize to people because I'm an American.
Yes.
And it is not the best feeling, but at the same time, there's a level of understanding that I pointed this out to my wife because she's here with us, that I don't think she gets as much guff about being an American because we're here and we're black.
Right.
And so they're like, if you're a rational black person, you obviously wouldn't have voted for whoever that maniac is.
Right.
So you're okay with us. Oh, you're with him? Then you're okay.
Right.
Which is the reverse of almost every other situation we're ever in.
Whereas I'm a middle-aged white man.
Oh, yeah, it's all your fault.
And so I went to a doctor's appointment. First, I met that doctor the day after the U.S. election. And so after a while, he's like, I noticed you have a bit of an accent. I'm like, yes, I'm rich from America. And it's like, oh, how do you feel about the results of the election? And I was like, I thought it was fucking terrible. And he's like, thank you, I'm glad to hear that. And then we had an actual conversation about it. Because you could tell he was like, please don't tell me you voted for him. No, hate him. It's like, cool, great. But yeah, I mean, you may have noticed then, being in London, that it is way more culturally diverse than perhaps England is presented usually.
As a percentage, yes, but I'll also still note that people even in London treat me differently as a black person.
I suspect. Well, okay, do they treat you on site, or they treat you differently once you open your mouth?
On site.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie. There's still some racism here. We had some riots last year.
Yeah, I know. I've already encountered it, but at the same time, it's different and not quite as blatant as is in the U.S.
Right.
And this is before white supremacists got in office.
Sure. Right. Exactly. I will note that one thing about London is Sadiq Khan is the mayor, not a white man. And he repeatedly talks about the fact that there are 285 different languages spoken regularly inside the boundaries of London, right? He's very active talking about the very kind of multicultural nature of London. And something that I noticed walking around, like if I'm on a tube, like usually half the time, people next to me, they're reading something that's not in English, or I'm hearing them talk about something that's not in English. So that's a very common experience. But on the flip side, you're right, like there is still a pretty distinct where black British people fit into things is still an open question.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to talk too much about this because I think we'll talk about it more explicitly in the podcast, but there's a certain character in one of the recent Spider-Verse films that does a very direct walk up to that exact problem that I found fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I will say, though, that even, for instance, so we went to the Churchill War Rooms today, which you don't know what day this is, random podcast listener, but today, for me, I went to Churchill War Rooms. And there was I want to say he was Indian, brown-skinned man who worked for security there that followed me around the Churchill War Rooms.
Right.
Like I was going to push something, I was going to touch something I shouldn't do. At the same time, when I went to Forbidden Planet, there was a white person that worked for Forbidden Planet that followed me downstairs and followed me back upstairs.
Okay.
So, I want you to know that it is equally aggressive towards black people, not
Sure. Right.
sort of. Which is not still the same as me being in the U.S., having had similar experiences that were more. God, I didn't think we'd be talking about this today. More endangering than what those encounters were.
Right. Because the logical outcome of these encounters here are probably more like you may be asked to leave.
Yeah.
And encounter somewhere else would be more aggressive and threatening.
So, in case some of our black listeners are thinking I would go to the UK and I'll be safe, you'll still be harassed, but it won't be the same level of harassment.
Right.
And I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I am on a research/vacation.
Fair enough. But it's still, I find it's interesting that even despite that, you're still, because of that past experience, you're able to navigate some of the cultural things. Like, we talked about prior to this, like, you wanted to meet up at a pub specifically.
Yeah.
So you knew what a pub was, how it fit culturally into British society, what kinds of things you expect to do in a pub. The nuances, maybe you weren't really familiar with, but you knew where pubs were, what they did, which was still a pretty big chunk, right?
Absolutely. And part of it could be that I love beer.
Sure.
But the other thing is, it has a sense of community that's associated with pubs and being around other people. And even in, for in the pub, people don't, regardless, all right, let me rephrase that. Generally, regardless of your race or gender in a pub, they don't care because you're just there to drink and then go about your business.
Right.
And there's a level of comfort in that. And if given my choice, I would always rather meet in a pub.
Fair. But you have also encountered the price of beers in pubs in London, at least in central London.
I am a man. So, I talked a lot about the negative stuff I encounter.
Sure.
I'm also, I can say fairly succinctly, I'm a person that also has privilege because I work in a high demanding yet high paying field. So I'm able to easily come to the UK and pay for an overpriced beer in a pub.
Right.
And not feel it how other people would have. Or
Right.
how I would have 20 years ago.
And certainly, if you're coming here on vacation, there's a certain amount of, we're going to set aside a large amount of money because we're going on vacation, so it wouldn't be a little extravagant. And so you don't feel as much as opposed to, me, where it's I just want to go out and have a pint in a pub. Oh, it's 12 quid. Maybe I'll just stay home and drink because it's I can spend literally half as much just buy something from the supermarket.
For instance, Eddy came all the way out here to see us. And because we're staying in the Claremont, that's like around the corner.
Right.
Which is a super nice hotel.
I live in North London, which is much further away.
Like the Claremont at Charing Cross. I'll tell you where he is because I won't be here.
Right, by the time you'll be gone.
I'll be in Paris or at home.
Yep.
Because that's like the next leg of my trip. So I'm out to travel, and it's fun.
Yeah. And like, I mean, certainly, before I moved here, we came on vacation all the time. So like, I do know the vacation experience. And you go around again, primarily central London. That's where a lot of the tourism happens. Occasionally, maybe a little bit west, a little bit east, but mainly it's where you hang out. And it's nice to be able to kind of just walk, or maybe have a short tube, or even cab ride if you want to wherever you want to see. But London's a really big place. I live very far north here, so it was about 80 minutes from my house to the space. Well, to the first space we went to meet at. Then it turned out that pub was closed. We went to a different pub.
So part of it is me coming to the UK, not understanding that Sunday is a weird day,
right?
And a lot of things are closed on Sunday that I didn't think would be.
Right.
And so Eddie's living with me, figuring out how the UK works.
Right. And to be fair, I also could have checked the website. I didn't until the last minute. It's like, oh, turns out it's closed. So it's just not bad of me too.
It's the nuances of like the differences. Like in the US, a bar or pub would be open that day.
Right.
And so that was an assumption on my part that I'm having to make adjustments for being in a new environment.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's certainly moving here. I've since found out that London has changed also a lot just in the past 5 years. Like coronavirus has changed London culture in a very significant way. So nightlife, for example, is really dying at the moment. There's been a lot of talk about that.
So you say that.
Uh-huh.
I was in Soho last night.
Well,
and Soho was jumping like from 8 p.m. on. There were so many people you couldn't even move through. We got a black cab to like go back to the hotel. It's around like 9ish, I think, last night. And there were so many people. The taxi is like, stop the entire way back.
Right. Well, yeah. Driving anywhere in London is a fool's game.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, certainly there's some places that have that, like across the UK, nightlife is way down, and some of it is, frankly, that seems like Gen Z, Gen A, I don't even know who they are anymore, are less keen to just go out to clubs, right? Especially when you grew up for 5 years going, hey, being around people's terrible.
It's true.
Right.
But it's also fun.
Sure.
Could you imagine when we were growing up if people did not go out to clubs or do any of that at all?
I know. I mean, both the punk and goth scenes were heavily centered around clubs.
I can't even imagine. I'm trying to think about it now, and it does not work or like function in my brain.
So where I live, I'm being vague because I don't want to accidentally dox myself. But where I live, we went to go see a comedian who had gotten some reasonable fame across the UK, but was originally from the city I was living in, or the part of the borough I was living in, I should say. And easily 5 minutes of jokes were like, yeah, I remember this club in the 90s when it was cool, and now it's crap. And I'm just like, no. I have no idea what you're talking about. But like other people in the crowd were like, yeah, oh my God, that club is so great, and now it's awful. And it's just like, there were strong opinions about how this club was awesome in the 90s and is shit now. And it's like, the fact that there's, and the funny, like, most of the people who were saying this stuff, or young in the crowd, were very clearly visibly middle-aged. And most of the people in the crowd are just like, much like me going, oh, okay. So it was interesting to see that there's definitely a age divides on this issue.
Yeah.
Just kind of checking my time, so make sure we don't go over. But also because Chris has other plans, so make sure we don't.
I will tell you what my plans are because this will not air when I'm here.
Right.
We're going to go to Sunday Roast in about 48 minutes.
48 minutes. It's very.
But we need to walk there, so
right.
We'll be cutting it close. But we wanted to like get a chance for all of you listeners to hear us meeting together for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like on our 100th episode, we did the Ask Each Other's Questions thing. This is kind of our 150th sort of issue, maybe kind of episode.
Is that where we're at now?
I don't know. I've lost track, actually.
All right, then. So, Eddie, my question for you is, Can you believe that we're still doing this?
In a way, no, honestly. I mean, this podcast has survived international move. It has survived some really rough times professionally for both of us. We've been doing it now for 3 years.
Over that, I think.
Has it been longer than that? Well, I've been here for 2 years. So it was at least a year after. Maybe it's closer to 4.
Yeah.
Because, did we start in 2022?
I thought we started 21.
Oh, jeez. Wow. It's January, I know that.
Wow.
Because you were weirdly persistent on that point.
Because it kicks off the new year. I am consistent.
You can just start whenever.
You know how there's constant K? There's consistent Chris. And so we came here today, and I was buying drinks, and I'm going to out you. Eddy made me go to the bar to order him something called a raspberry.
A baby strawberry panini.
So I had to say those words
Yep.
to a bartender
Yep.
as Eddy was hiding at the table, snickering the entire time.
And I had just eaten said baby strawberries, which are soaked full of alcohol.
As well they should
my
be.
tongue is tingling. They are very intense.
Do you regret starting this podcast?
No, not at all. At times it was a bit stressful just because I was for a while doing 2 podcasts at the same time. But the first podcast we changed format with that, and then ultimately it's now more or less gone to hibernation. So that certainly has helped. Of course, now I'm on a different podcast, but I'm not running it, right? The actual play podcast, the Red Moon role-playing thing, I just show up and I talk, and then it goes away, and I don't care about it.
So part of my question was so I could set this up. If you're not listening to Red Moon Role Playing, they're actually doing the actual play of the Master and All Thotip that literally dropped this morning, episode 1.
Yes, it did.
Where you can hear Sir Eddy Webb.
Have you listened to it yet?
Not yet. It's on my to-do list. I'm in fucking London. I don't have time to listen to it.
I don't have time for your shenanigans, Webb.
But I have time to promote Sir Eddy Webb playing an American because he's not an American. He's like a British person.
Both.
On a podcast.
Okay, trust me. I am both American and British because I have to pay taxes to both places, so I'm deeply aware.
As well you should.
Actually, I didn't owe any taxes this year, so one of the few advantages of the U.S.-UK relationship is that the U.S. acknowledges that I pay taxes here. I don't have to pay. I don't pay double taxes. So I have to prove I paid enough taxes in the UK, which usually I have. That's a lot of money.
All right, so since we're here and we're live, what do we want to do for our 200th episode? Because that has to be something.
You have talked about running an action play of some kind.
I always talk about running a game. There's like literally nothing new about that.
You have made noises about a cyberpunk game.
But I'm not going to run that.
You have made noises about a Haunted West game.
How likely do you think it is that we could pull off this idea? We could have Mike Pondsmith run a cyberpunk game for Jay, you, and myself. What magic would I need to do to make that happen, Jay, if you're listening to this episode?
Yeah, seriously. And the magic is probably a lot of money.
Give me a figure.
And also, Mike's assistant figuring out how to handle all the tech on that.
Well, he's got Jay and everyone else to handle the tech pieces.
Well, Mike has a different assistant we found out through the Transformers podcast. Which I'm saying I will never look at tracks the same way again after that podcast.
So I've been trying to figure out how I could suggest to Jay that Mike should run that game.
Look, you just say, hey, Jay, can Mike run that game?
It can't be that easy.
Right. But even then, like, honestly, even if it was like you running or me running or Jay running, I mean, it'd also be fun. I mean, like, we don't have to have Mike Pondsmith.
It is our 200th episode. I want it to be, like, special.
Because God knows we'll make the 300.
You never know. It's a possibility. It is our whimsy to just literally, we want time to hang out and talk and record it. It's literally what we boil down to.
Really, yeah. It's talk about shows we love. Or shows that are Total Recall 2070.
All right, so since he said that, our next run is going to be a James Bond run.
Yes.
We're excited about it. I went to Duke's Bar. I recorded some very bad audio on my
Yes,
cell phone.
you did.
Horrible. Eddie even sent me a text saying, this is horrible audio.
It is bad audio.
And we're still going to put it in front of it anyway because I went and I did it. And I drank 30-pound martinis, Eddie. 30 pounds. I drank 2. Jill drank 1. 3 30-pound martinis and a juice and something for Zora, which I think was like 6 or 7 pounds. All that money I spent for our podcast.
I'm just saying, each martini would have bought you 3 actual James Bond novels.
But I did it for the podcast.
No, you didn't. You did it for yourself. You did it for your own martini. Martini-soaked.
So, for anyone that's curious, it is meant to be, because this is one of my favorite Glenn Campbell songs, playing right now, called The Wichita Lineman, as I'm telling you about this podcast. So it is meant to be.
It's fate.
Meant to be.
Sadly, I was not able to go to Duke's, where you went to, which is the bar that Ian Fleming used to go to, apparently.
Yes. I'm very excited about it.
I look forward to talking about Ian Fleming and James Bond, even though there's a lot of minefields as well involved in that conversation.
So, we're not talking about that.
Right, no, we're going to talk about, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm excited about it.
If you had to make, thank you,
Or
Pugmire 3.0 with a different system that's not D&D, what would you do it with?
Do you want me to just say it with Roberus and get it over with?
No,
or?
I could have a slew of questions I already thought about that I'm randomly going to ask you.
Without answering your question, I do want to talk about one of my favorite playtesting comments. So back with, first issue of Pugmire, the whole point of using D&D was that I wanted to evoke a feeling of nostalgia, both in the characters and the players. The dogs have nostalgia for an idealized version of humanity that never actually existed, but in the way that when people look at people in the past, they can start to idealize them. Victorians did a great job of idealizing the Greeks and Romans, for example. But also as players, I wanted to play idealized version of Dungeons & Dragons. I wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons that existed in their mind, not the Dungeons & Dragons actually played. Because if you've played AD&D, it is wild. It's not bad, it's just very different. So that was my design. And so I sent out to playtesters. I specifically tried to find some people who had no experience with Dungeons & Dragons. It was a little challenging, but I did manage to find a group of people who were excited about tabletop role-playing games who had very little experience with D&D. And they were great because they really helped point out things that I just assumed people knew.
Yeah.
And they're like, why is it called hit points? Because they don't involve. This is a great conversation. Why is it called hit points? Because they don't help you to hit people anymore. Which is a great observation if you have no knowledge of that stuff, right?
Just be called health.
Right. And so it changed the stamina points, and they were fine with that. But the one piece of data I got back, like, this game would be amazing if it were completely changed into Powered by the Apocalypse.
I hate hearing people say that to me.
Right. So you don't like when people say Powered by the Apocalypse?
I'm not a fan of it. Every system should not be powered by the apocalypse. You got to create a hack for it.
Right.
Which I did. But, okay, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. Maybe a little soapbox. Games are built with some... All right, people tell you that I don't care what the system is. Not true.
Right.
People have considered the system they're building their game for.
Yep.
And a system is integral to a game from a designer perspective.
Yes.
And if your system is built for D20, built for the Ouroboros system, built for 2D20, you made it to run with that system.
Right.
People don't have to play that system. Don't suggest to a designer that they should instead just use some other system.
Right.
That is the utter base level of insulting for someone that has spent hundreds of hours making something. If you don't like it, that's fine.
And we certainly saw that during the D20 glut, where so many systems were crammed to D20 and was very obviously not a good fit,
Yes. And people still now are making 5e. I think yesterday I saw a 5e post-apocalyptic space western game.
Right.
And they wanted to be 5e so they can say, hey, my game's 5e, and then a bunch of people run out and buy it because it's 5e.
Right.
The system may not fit, their idea may not fit that system, but they do it so they get the money for it.
Right.
And I will always give support to anyone that goes out and makes their own system, regardless of how I may feel about it at the end of the day, because it's someone that's creating something that's their own to try to build something new.
Right. And certainly I understand the appeal of I want I'm keen to pick up this game because it's similar to a game that my players have already played, so they have to learn less. I get that logic, but you can't design for that, right?
No.
If you're, like in Pugmire's case, I had a very specific intentional plan for that, and so I had something that's very kind of 5e-ish, but it was very much not exactly 5th edition D&D. And the second edition is even less explicitly 5th edition D&D. I made some more and more changes that fit what I wanted the game to do specifically. But the reason why was I had a very specific design goal with that. So even though I'm using not quite an off-the-rack system, I made an intentional design choice around that. And so when people say, "Oh, it's basically 5th edition," it's not. I made just changes on that. And so when you just say, "Oh, well," if at your table you go, "Well, we just use blah system," great, whatever you want, I don't care. But if you say, "Oh, well, your game should be this other system," no, I made a choice, and that's for me to decide. It's not for you to decide.
Because for me as a designer, I am inclined to think in D100. Mm-hmm. Like, that is my preferred style and game system.
Right.
Be it the Ouroboros system, be it Call of Cthulhu, be it Delta Green. I like the streamlined flow of a D100 because it's so simple that everyone understands it. Then you can build more complex mechanics on top of it
right.
that are easier to engage with because everyone, all right, so I just roll under this number. Got it.
Right.
Then I can add anything else I want because you already understand the fundamental system of it.
Right.
Elegant. Beautiful.
Right. And going back to, I jokingly said that D&D is kind of our lingua franca of the D&D. That's not entirely true. Like, I know Call of Cthulhu is more popular here in the UK.
And in Japan, I think.
Korea. Korea is extremely popular. But Japan actually is interesting because their initial fantasy game was not Dungeons & Dragons, it was Tunnels and Trolls. And so they have Dungeons & Trolls like the West has for D&D. And that's wild because I worked on a Tunnels and Trolls mobile game for a good period of time. And so I was like, I haven't played Tunnels and Trolls decades, man. You know, what's the latest and greatest? Let me sure I update it. It's cool, great. And they sent me a bunch of stuff, but one thing they sent me was a jumpstart functionally.
Yeah.
But it was a manga. And I'm like, this is obviously, yeah, it's so big in Japan. Basically, they more or less made a bunch of training materials for Tunnels and Trolls, then they just translated back into English for the Western audience because it was so big there, right? So yeah, it's everyone has their own kind of approach to things.
Did I tell you that my own 2 fantasy games I'm making now?
No.
Krakens and crevices,
right?
And carrions and caves.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna make those.
You're gonna make those. And the family has returned.
I don't think they can hear you. Do you want to try again, kiddo?
No, she's intentionally...
Silently shakes her head no.
No, because I want to be recorded.
So then, I guess we should wrap up.
Should wrap up? You have any closing thoughts, Chris? Where can we find you online?
Yeah, if you want to look for me online, you can find me at Darker Hue on Blue Sky. You come to the website, darkerstudios.com. Or you can send random messages into the ether with my kid's name if you know what it is.
You can find me also on the Darker Hue Discord, where I'm usually posting Transformers memes or the latest Doctor Who stuff. Apparently, Robert Sherman's novels are coming out in October. So if you want to read the Chimes of Midnight, he did a novelization of that, so we talked about that. But otherwise, you can find me at pugsteady.com. That's my website. That's also my Blue Sky.
And if you're looking for my latest fantasy game, soon to be released,
Krakens
and No, you're messing up my own title of my name.
Caves and Caravers.
Now it's going to be Caves and Krakens.
Caves and Krakens.
You can find that on my website, nevertobecreated.com.